In this video, we will discuss selection and culling of layer chickens. By definition, selection refers to the process of choosing an animal or animals with the desirable traits that are to be maintained and reproduced in a herd or flock. On the other hand, culling is the removal or elimination of animals with inferior or undesirable traits. For both selection and culling, animals are evaluated based on the animal's physical attributes or characteristics, its production performance, and/or based on the personal preference of the raiser or producer. The process of selection and culling can be done in two ways. First is by physical examination, and second is by animal production performance evaluation. In physical examination, the physical attribute of the animal is evaluated through visual observation and palpation of certain reference body parts. Meanwhile, selection and culling through animal performance evaluation involves the analysis of the animal's performance based on records kept in the farm. It is a must that records are accurate and kept properly in order to obtain reliable evaluation results. Now, let's describe how to identify and select good layer chickens, as well as identify and cull non-laying or unproductive ones based on physical examination. The reference body parts that need to be identified in doing selection and culling through physical examination include the comb, wattles, earlobes, eyes and eye rings, beak, breast, abdomen, pelvic bones, keel bone, vent, legs or shanks, and the wing feathers. When a hen is not laying, she deposits fat on her body. This fat contains a yellow pigment, which gives the yellow color to the legs, beak, skin, and other body parts in yellow skin varieties of chicken. As soon as a hen begins to produce eggs, this yellow pigment is diverted from the body and is used in coloring the egg yolk. As long as a hen produces eggs, the pigment is all used by the yolk and none of it finds its way to the body. And this process of losing of yellow pigment or fading of color in a hen's body parts is called bleaching. Bleaching is a good indicator of the time the hen has been in production, and it is easily seen in yellow-skinned breeds such as the white leghorns. When it comes to the order of bleaching of body parts, the vent is the first to undergo bleaching, followed by eye ring, earlobes, beak, bottom of the feet, shanks, and lastly the hocks. This order of bleaching happens as those parts of the body where the blood circulation is greatest fade first. Shown in the picture is a good layer that has a large, oval, pinkish to almost white vent. As mentioned in the previous slide, the vent is the first to lose the yellow color, which happens about 4 to 7 days after egg production starts. A white or pink vent of a yellow-skinned bird indicates she is laying. Meanwhile, the vent of a poor layer, as shown here, is small, round, puckered, and yellowish. This picture shows a good layer which is characterized by red comb and wattles and bright eyes, which indicate health and vitality. Earlobe, beak, and eye ring are also bleached. Next to vent, bleaching is observed in the eye ring at about 7 to 10 days, in earlobes at 2 to 3 weeks, and in beak at 4 to 8 weeks from the start of lay. The eye rings, which are in the inner edge of the eyelids, bleach out a little more slowly than the vent, and therefore, bleached or white eye rings indicate a longer production than a bleached vent. The earlobes on the white lobe varieties bleach next and indicate a still longer period of production than a white vent and white eye rings. The color leaves the beak beginning at the base and gradually disappearing until it leaves the front part of the upper beak. The lower beak bleaches faster than the upper. Compared to a good layer, poor layer in this picture has yellow coloration of the eye ring and beak with shriveled comb and wattle. The comb of a non-laying hen is often covered with scale and is pale in color. The bottom of the feet and back of the shanks of good layers are bleached as shown in the picture. Bleaching of the bottom of the feet occurs next to earlobe bleaching, and this happens at 8 to 10 weeks, followed by the bleaching in shanks at 15 to 24 weeks after the start of play. The shanks are the last to lose the yellow color, and for this reason are the surest indication of long continuous production. The color leaves the front of the shank first and gradually fades from the scales on the back as the length of the laying period increases. Meanwhile, bleaching is observed the latest in hocks at about 24 weeks after the first egg has been laid. Meanwhile, the feet in the shanks of poor layer are yellow pigmented or have coloration, as shown in this picture. The abdomen of a good layer feels elastic, full, and wide. The fat covering of the body cavity in a laying hen is soft and pliable. A laying hen consumes more feed than one that is not laying. A high egg producer consumes more feed than a poor egg producer. In order to consume and digest this feed, the intestines of a laying hen are also larger than a hen not laying. When laying, the ovary and oviduct are greatly enlarged and require more room. To provide this extra room, the body increases in depth. As shown in the picture, the span or depth of the abdomen is measured between pelvic bones and the tip of the keel or breastbone. The hen that shows the greater body depth is to be chosen as a good layer if she shows the other marks of egg production. Good layers, as shown in the picture, have a depth of 4 fingers width. On the other hand, the abdomen of the non-laying hen is dry and hard. Moreover, unproductive hens have a body depth of about 2 fingers width only, as shown in the picture, as such hens lack the capacity for handling a large amount of feed. The pelvic bones of a laying hen are straight and flexible, with very little or no fat around them. They are spread apart far enough to permit the passage of the egg. The spread varies with the individual and the breed, but no definite measurement can be given. Pelvic bones of good layers have at least 2 fingers width between them, as shown in the picture. Meanwhile, the distance between pelvic bones of poor layers is 1 finger width or less. Chickens undergo molting each year, wherein they lose the older feathers and then grow new ones. When in molt, most hens stop producing eggs and resume laying after the molt is completed. Late molters will lay for 12 to 14 months before molting, while early molters may begin to molt after only a few months in production. Late molters are generally the better laying hens, as they tend to produce longer before molting. With a shorter molting period of about 2 to 3 months, hens will return to full production sooner. Meanwhile, early molters produce at a shorter period before molt, which may take as long as 4 to 6 months, hence are considered poor layers. Whether a hen is an early or late molter can be determined through the primary wing feathers. As shown in the picture, there are 10 primary feathers on each wing that are usually separated from the smaller secondary feathers by a short axial feather. Molting birds lose the primary feathers in regular order, beginning with the feather nearest the axial feather and progressing to the outer wing tip feathers. Late molters will lose primary feathers in groups of 2 or more feathers, whereas early molters lose feathers individually. Replacement feathers begin to grow shortly after the old feathers are shed. Late molting birds can be distinguished by groups of replacement feathers showing similar stages of growth. As a general rule, the first hens in the flock to molt should be sold, and the last to molt should be kept for breeding purposes. This picture shows a late molter hen with similar stages of growth of replacements of feathers 1, 2, 3, and 4. This indicates that the hen was able to molt group of primary feathers. This picture, on the other hand, shows an early molter hen with feather 1 that has just been molted, indicating that the hen is molting primary feathers individually. Meanwhile, the new replacement feather is not large enough to show. This ends our discussion on the selection and culling of layer chickens.